The Verather had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. In all that time they had never known defeat. They had never tasted fear. They had never met a species that could stand against them and survive. They were perfect killing machines. Evolution had shaped them on a world where everything wanted to eat everything else. Their planet Frow's Prime was a nightmare of volcanic mountains, acid swamps, and endless predators. Only the strongest survived. Only the most brutal thrived. The Verather stood 3 meters tall. Their skin was thick and armored, capable of stopping most projectile weapons. Their claws could tear through metal. Their reflexes were so fast that they could catch a bullet out of the air if they saw it coming. They had 4 arms each, one strong enough to crush bone. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. Their hearing could detect a heartbeat from 50 m away, but their greatest weapon was their mind. The Vera were not mindless beasts. They were intelligent, cunning, and utterly without mercy. They had learned long ago that the universe was simple. The strong ate the weak. The powerful took from the powerless. This was not cruelty. This was nature. This was the way things were supposed to be. They called it the natural order. When the Verather first left their world, they found a galaxy full of soft, weak species, creatures that talked about peace and cooperation, creatures that believed in sharing and kindness. The Verather found this amusing, then they found it useful. They conquered their first neighbor in less than a cycle. The species had tried to negotiate. They had offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The Verather had eaten their ambassadors and burned their cities. After that, word spread quickly. Some species tried to fight. They all failed. Some species tried to run. The Verather hunted them down. Some species surrendered immediately, hoping for mercy. Verather had no word for mercy in their language. They had to borrow it from a conquered species, and they only used it as a joke. Over 12,000 years, the Var Dominion grew to include over 4,000 star systems. Billions upon billions of conquered people served them as slaves, as livestock, or as entertainment. The Verather bred the most useful ones and ate the rest. They were not wasteful. They were efficient. Warlord Thrax was one of the greatest hunters in the Dominion. He commanded the 7th Hunting Fleet, a force of 500 warships that had conquered more than 200 worlds. He had personally killed thousands of prey with his own claws. He had never been wounded in battle. He had never failed in a hunt. When the report came to his flagship, Thrax was in the middle of his evening meal. A servant species called the mealery was considered a delicacy, and Thrax enjoyed them prepared live. He did not look up from his plate as his subordinate entered. "Speak, Thrax," said the subordinate, a younger Verather named Krello bowed low. "Warlord, our long-range scouts have detected a new species, unexplored sector far. Spiral armed, single inhabited planet." Thrax finally looked up. New species were rare these days. The Dominion had mapped most of the galaxy. Finding fresh prey was always interesting. Assessment. Krello pulled up the data on a holographic display. The planet is third from its star. Moderate climate, low gravity. The inhabitants appear to be carbon-based bipeds. Soft tissue, no natural armor. Slow reflexes, limited strength. They have primitive electromagnetic communications and basic space travel within their own system. Thrax studied the images. The creatures looked pathetic, thin limbs, flat teeth. Small eyes, they wore artificial coverings over their skin because their bodies could not even regulate temperature properly. They had no claws, no fangs, no venom. They were prey. Animals, obviously, completely. Civilization level, Thrax asked. Early industrial to early space age. They have nuclear technology but have not weaponized it effectively. Their military forces are fragmented across their planet. They appear to spend most of their energy fighting each other. Thrax made a sound of disgust. They fight among themselves with no external threat. Yes, warlord, they seem to have divided their world into hundreds of competing territories. This was not unusual for primitive species, but Thrax always found it distasteful. Prey should know its place. Fighting each other was a waste of resources. Send a scout vessel. Thrax ordered. Full assessment, population count, resource mapping, resistance potential, standard procedure. Krellbowen left. Thrax returned to his meal. He thought no more about the small blue planet or its weak inhabitants. They would be added to the Dominion like all the others. Perhaps their meat would be tasty. Perhaps they would make useful slaves. Either way, they would learn the natural order soon enough. The scout vessel was called the Silent Claw. It was crewed by 20 Wrath hunters, all experienced in assessing new prey species. They entered the system carefully, using passive sensors to avoid detection, not because they feared the primitives, but because standard procedure was to gather intelligence before announcing their presence. The system was unremarkable. 8 planets, 1 star, scattered asteroid fields. The third planet was clearly the prize. It glowed blue and green, covered in water and vegetation. Millions of artificial lights sparkled on its night side. The population density was high. This was good. More pre meant more resources. Commander of Raleigh ordered a full scan. His sensors counted the satellites, the orbital stations, the primitive spacecraft. His communications officer decoded their electromagnetic signals. Their languages were crude but learnable. Their broadcasts revealed everything about them. They called themselves humans. They called their planet Earth. Varric watched their entertainment broadcasts with contempt. They told stories about peace and love. They celebrated weakness and called it virtue. They worried about the feelings of other creatures. They had even created laws to protect their own prey animals from suffering. Pathetic. Vic said they do not even understand what they are. His second in command agreed. They will learn. Commander, they will all learn. Valak ordered the ship to move closer. He wanted detailed scans of their military capabilities. He wanted to know exactly how easy this conquest would be. That was when everything went wrong. The attack came from nowhere. One moment the Silent Claw was cruising toward Earth at a safe distance. Next moment something hit them. Multiple somethings. Vlak barely had time to see the warning lights before the first explosion tore through the hall. The projectiles had come from the dark side of the planet's moon. They moved faster than anything Varric had ever seen. They punched through the Wrath, their armor like it was nothing. The second volley hit the engines. The third hit the command deck. Valak died without understanding what had killed him. The Silent Claw broke apart in the cold darkness between the moon and Earth. Its crew was dead in seconds. Its wreckage tumbled silently through space, on Earth in a facility buried deep. Underground, a group of humans watched the destruction on their screens. They did not celebrate, they did not cheer. They simply made notes and began preparing for what would come next. First contact successful, the lead officer said, "They'll send more, we'll be ready." Another replied far away on his flagship. Warlord Thrax waited for a report that would never come. After 3 days of silence, he assumed the scout vessel had suffered a malfunction. Perhaps an asteroid collision, perhaps an engine failure. These things happened. Even to wreck their ships, he sent 3 more vessels, better ones, faster ones. Crewed by some of his best hunters, they entered the system. They sent one brief transmission confirming arrival, then nothing. Thrax began to pay attention. Now for ships gone, no distress signals, no wreckage detected on long-range sensors. It was as if they had simply vanished. Krell suggested caution. Perhaps they should send a full scouting fleet. Perhaps they should approach slowly and carefully. Thrax disagreed. Caution was for prey. The further did not slink and hide. They attacked. They dominated. They conquered. But Thrax was not stupid, for ships lost meant something was different about this system, something unexpected. He assembled a proper hunting pack, 50 warships, all heavily armed, all crewed by experienced hunters. He took command personally. He would see for himself what had happened to his scouts as the fleet prepared for the jump to the distant system. Thrax called his commanders together. He looked at them with his cold predator eyes. "Something has killed our brothers," he said. "Something on that small blue world. I do not know what it is. I do not care what it is. We are Vrather. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. Nothing has ever stood against us. Nothing ever will." His commanders roared in agreement. The sound shook the deck plates. "We go to hunt," Thrax continued. "We go to kill. We go to teach these soft creatures what they truly are, prey. Nothing more, nothing less." The fleet jumped in the cold depths of space. Blue Planet waited. Its people continued their lives, unaware that most of the galaxy considered them food. They went to work. They raised their children. They complained about traffic and weather and politics, but some of them knew what was coming. Some of them had been preparing for a long time, not because they had known about the Varather specifically, but because they understood something that the Varather did not. Humans had been prey once, millions of years ago, on the ancient plains of their world. The 50 warships of Warlord Thrax emerged from hyperspace. At the edge of the solar system, their sensors immediately began scanning, searching for threats, cataloging everything they saw. The Varather were thorough. They were methodical. They had conquered thousands of worlds using the same careful approach. Thrax stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger. He watched the data stream across his displays. 8 planets, 1 yellow star scattered, debris in various orbital paths, and their third from the sun, the small blue world that had somehow destroyed 4 of his ships. Report, he ordered. His sensor officer worked quickly. "Warlord, I have located the wreckage of our scout vessels. They are in orbit around the 3rd planet. All 4 ships confirmed destroyed." Thrax felt a cold anger building in his chest. He had expected this, but seeing it confirmed was different. Those had been his hunters, his pack. Someone would pay for their death's cause of destruction. The officer hesitated. Unknown warlord. The wreckage shows signs of kinetic impact and explosive damage, high velocity projectiles, but our sensors detect no orbital weapons platforms, no defensive satellites capable of such firepower. The planet appears to have only primitive space infrastructure. Thrax studied the planet through the viewport. It looked peaceful, harmless, covered clouds and water and green vegetation. Nothing about it suggested danger. The weapons must be hidden, he said. Ground-based systems perhaps, or concealed satellites. These creatures are clever than they appear. He was right, but not in the way he thought. Krellel approached carefully. Warlord, should we attempt communication? Standard Dominion protocol requires that we offer surrender terms before attack. Thrax considered this. The protocol was a formality. No species ever truly believed the Varather would show mercy, because they never did, but sometimes the threat of immediate destruction convinced prey species to cooperate. It made the conquest easier. Very well. Thrax said, open a channel all frequencies. The communications officer worked his console. After a moment he nodded. Channel open. Warlord Thrax spoke in the standard trade language of the Dominion, which had been forced upon thousands of species, creatures of the third planet. This is Warlord Thrax of the Varather Dominion. You have destroyed ships belonging to the Dominion. This clears throat is an act of war. However, the Dominion is merciful to those who submit quickly. Surrender now. Disable your weapons. Prepare your population for processing. If you cooperate, some of you will be allowed to live as servants. If you resist, you will all die. You have 1 hour to respond. He cut the channel and waited around him. His bridge crew prepared for battle. They checked their weapons. They reviewed their attack formations. They did not expect surrender. They never did. The response came in less than 10 minutes. It was not what Thrax expected. The voice that spoke was calm and clear. It used the Dominion trade language perfectly, without accent or hesitation. Vra there. Vessel, this is the United Earth Defense Command. We received your message. We have a response. There was a brief pause. Thrax leaned forward, curious despite himself. You were warned, the voice continued. When your first scout entered this system, we sent a message on all frequencies. We told you this space was claimed. We told you to leave. You ignored us. Your scout ships were destroyed as a consequence of their intrusion. The voice hardened. Now you have brought 50 warships into our territory. You have threatened our people with slavery and death. You have made your intentions clear, so we will make ours clear as well. Another pause. Thrax felt something strange, an unfamiliar sensation. It took him a moment to recognize it. Uncertainty. Leave now, the voice said. Turn your ships around and return to your empire. Tell your masters that this system is not for them. Tell them that humanity will not submit. Tell them that if they send more ships, those ships will not return. The voice grew colder. This is your only warning. This is your only chance. We do not want war, but we are prepared for it. The choice is yours. The channel closed. Thraxra stared at the communication console for a long moment. His crew watched him, waiting for orders. They had never heard Prey speak to Ivra, their warlord, like that. They had never heard such calm defiance. Finally, Thrax laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. His crew joined in. relieved that their warlord was not. Afraid, the tension on the bridge broke. Brave words, Thrax said, foolish words. These creatures have destroyed for small scout ships, and they think they can threaten the Dominion. They do not understand what they face. He turned to his tactical officer. All ships attack. Formation. Target their orbital infrastructure first. Destroy their satellites, their stations, everything they have in space. Then we bombard their cities until they beg for the mercy we will not give. The fleet moved forward. They were halfway to Earth when the first missiles appeared on their sensors. They came from everywhere at once, from the asteroid belt, from the moons of the outer planets, from hidden platforms scattered throughout the system. Hundreds of missiles, all converging on the Vera fleet. The Vera point defense systems activated, plasma cannons and interceptor drones engaged. The incoming projectiles, many were destroyed, but not enough. The missiles that got through were devastating. They were not like Vrather weapons. Varier weapons were designed for efficiency, maximum damage, minimum waste. These human weapons were different. They were crude, they were brutal, they were terrifyingly effective. Nuclear warheads, shaped charges that focused their explosions into concentrated beams of plasma, kinetic penetrators moving at a fraction of the speed of light. The further armor, which had withstood every weapon the galaxy had thrown at it, cracked and buckled and failed. 3 ships died in the first volley, 5 more in the second. The fleet scattered, trying to avoid the barrage, but the missiles kept coming. They were guided. They adapted. They worked together in ways that Vrath, their weapons, did not. Thrax roared orders. His ships returned fire, targeting the missile platforms, trying to destroy them at their source. Some platforms were hit, but more missiles launched, always more than they. Human ships appeared. They were small, much smaller than Vrath, their warships. They looked fragile, almost delicate, but they moved with a speed and precision that Thrax had never seen. They attacked in perfect coordination. Groups of 5 or 6 ships would focus on a single Vrath vessel, hitting it from multiple angles simultaneously. They used their small size to slip through defensive fire. They got close to close for the Vera, their heavy weapons to track, and they tore their targets apart with concentrated rail gun fire. When a Varier ship targeted them, they scattered. When the targeting system shifted, they reformed and attacked again. They seemed to know exactly what the Verther would do before they did it. Thrax watched the battle unfold with growing disbelief. His fleet was dying. Ship after ship was torn apart by these small, fragile creatures. The humans were outmaneuvering his commanders at every turn. They were predicting Vrather tactics and countering them before they could be executed. How do they know? Krello shouted over the sound of explosions. How do they know what we will do? Thrax understood suddenly. These humans had studied them. Somehow, impossibly, they had learned how Vrather thought. They had analyzed pack hunting tactics. They had identified patterns and weaknesses. They had prepared specifically for this fight. The humans were not fighting blind. They had been waiting for this. They had been ready. A railed slug punched through the eternal hungers. Hall, the ship shuddered. Alarm screamed. Thrax grabbed a support beam to keep from falling. All ships, he bellowed, fall back, retreat to the system edge, regroup and reassess. It was the first time in his life he had ordered a retreat. The taste of it was bitter in his mouth. Of the 50 ships that had entered the system, only 11 made it out. The rest were debris, scattered across millions of kilometers of space. Thousands of Rak hunters were dead. Thrax looked at the wreckage of his fleet. He looked at the small blue planet that had done this. He felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not for himself, of rather did not fear death, but fear for his people. Fear for the Dominion, fear of what these creatures might be capable of. As his surviving ships limped away, a final transmission reached them, the same calm voice from before. You were warned, you chose not to listen, now you have paid the price. Go home, Vrather, tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humanity does not want war, but tell them also that if they come again, they will not find prey, they will find predators. The channel closed. Thrax said nothing for a long time. He simply stared at the blue planet growing smaller in the distance. His wounds, the first real wounds he had ever suffered, throbbed with pain. Krell approached carefully. Warlord, what do we report to the Supreme Predator? Thrax turned slowly. His eyes were dark with something new, something that mixed rage and respect in equal measure. We tell him the truth, Thrax said. We tell him that we have found something the Dominion has never faced before. We tell him that these humans are not prey. He paused, remembering the battle, remembering how the human ships had moved, how they had fought, how they had refused to stop even when outnumbered, how they had sacrificed some of their own to protect others. We tell him, Thrax continued, that weathery Grand Hunt was the largest military operation in Vrather history. 1,000 warships, the combined might of every hunting fleet in the Dominion, over 2 million warriors, each one trained from birth to kill without hesitation and conquer without mercy. The Supreme Predator himself commanded from the flagship, the Devourer of Worlds. He was ancient by Var standards, over 300 years old. His hide scarred from countless battles. He had personally killed 6 species in their entirety. He had eaten the hearts of 100 conquered kings. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy, and he had come to remind the universe of that fact. Warlord Thrax flew at his side, commanding the Vanguard fleet. His wounds had healed, but his pride had not. He wanted revenge. He wanted to tear these humans apart with his own claws. He wanted to show them what happened to prey that dared to fight back. The fleet traveled together, wall of metal and death crossing the void between stars. It took them several days to reach the distant system. During that time, the Supreme Predator studied everything the Dominion knew about humans. It was not much. They had existed for only a few hundred years. They had developed civilization only in the last 10,000. They had reached space barely a century ago. By galactic standards, they were infants. They should have been easy prey, and yet the Supreme Predator watched the battle recordings again and again. He saw how the human ships moved. He saw how they coordinated. He saw how they sacrificed themselves to protect each other. This was not the behavior of prey. This was not even the behavior of most predators. This was the behavior of pack hunters. The Vera were pack hunters too. It was what made them so effective. But watching the humans, the Supreme Predator saw something different. The Verther pack was based on strength. The strongest led, the weakest obeyed. Failure was punished with death. The human pack seemed to work Differently, their ships protected each other regardless of size or power. Their commanders took risks to save their subordinates. They treated their wounded instead of leaving them to die. It was inefficient, it was wasteful, it should have been a weakness, so why had it worked so well? The Supreme Predator did not have an answer, but he was not worried. He had brought overwhelming force. Whatever tricks these humans had, they would not be enough against 1,000 warships. The fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system and paused to form up. The Supreme Predator wanted his enemy to see what was coming. He wanted them to understand the hopelessness of their situation. He wanted them to despair before they died. He ordered a transmission on all frequencies. Creatures of Earth, this is the Supreme Predator of the Further Dominion. Your defiance has been noted. Your destruction of our ships has been noted. Now face the consequence. He gestured to the display showing his massive fleet. You see what approaches 1,000 warships, 2 million hunters, the full might of an empire that has conquered galaxies. There is no escape. There is no hope. There is only death. He paused, letting the words sink in. I offer you one chance, not to survive, but to choose how you die. Surrender now and we will be quick. Your deaths will be clean. Your world will be preserved for our use. Resist and we will make you suffer. We will burn you cities. We will enslave your children. We will feast on your flesh for 1,000 years. He smiled, showing his massive fangs. Choose wisely. The response came almost immediately. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Command. We received your message, Supreme Predator. Here is our response. The Admiral's voice was calm, steady, almost casual. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We are not your prey. We are not your slaves. We are humanity, and we have faced extinction before. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived ourselves. We will survive you. There was steel in the voice. Now you bring 1,000 ships. You think that is enough? You think numbers make you strong? You are wrong. We have had years to prepare for this. We have built weapons you cannot imagine. We have planned strategies you cannot predict. We know how you think. We know how you hunt, and we know how to kill you. The Admiral paused. But we do not want to. That is the difference between us. You kill because you enjoy it. We kill because we must. So here is our counter offer. Turn around. Go home. Leave us alone. Do that and this ends. No more death. No more war. Do not do that, and we will show you what humanity is capable of when we have no choice but to fight. The channel closed. The Supreme Predator laughed. He laughed until the sound echoed through the bridge. His officers laughed with him, relieved that their leader was not concerned. Brave, the Supreme Predator said. Stupid but brave. I almost wish we could keep some of them as pets. They would be entertaining. He gave the order. All ships advance. Destroy everything. The grand hunt surged forward. The battle that followed would be remembered for 10,000 years. The humans had indeed prepared. They had spent years building defenses throughout the solar system. Hidden weapons platforms, orbital fortresses, minefields scattered through the asteroid belt, and ships, hundreds of ships smaller than the Vrather vessels but deadly in their own way. But the humans had also prepared something else, something the Vrather did not expect. They had made allies. The first sign came when Vera sensors detected unknown ships emerging from Hyperspace behind the fleet. These were not human vessels, they were older. Stranger, clearly alien, the Vrather. Recognized some of them, the Melori, the Krexian Collective, the Sithrani Empire. Species that had been conquered, enslaved or driven to the edge of extinction by the Dominion, species that should have been broken beyond any hope of resistance. There were only a few dozen of them. Their weapons were outdated, their ships were held together with desperate repairs. They should not have been a threat, but they were not alone. More ships appeared, and more species from across the Dominion's vast territory, former slaves subjugated, peoples, the prey that had been waiting for millennia for someone to stand up to. The predators, they had found that someone in humanity. The message had gone out months ago, carried by smugglers and refugees and secret couriers. The humans were fighting back. The humans were winning, and they were asking for help, not demanding, not commanding, asking, offering alliance. Instead of subjugation, many had been too afraid to respond, but some had answered, and now they were here. The Vrather fleet found itself surrounded. It was still vastly more powerful than the combined rebel forces, but it was no longer fighting a single enemy. It was fighting an entire galaxy's worth of anger and pain and desperation. The battle was chaos. Vera warships tore through rebel vessels by the dozens. But for every ship destroyed to seem to take its place, and the humans led from the front, their small deadly ships, cutting through VAR formations with surgical precision. The supreme predator watched his fleet being chipped away. Not defeated, not yet, but wounded. Bleeding. The hunt was supposed to be quick and glorious. Instead it was becoming a grinding war of attrition. And the humans kept coming. They seemed to know every weakness in the Varar tactics. They exploited blind spots that should not have existed. They predicted maneuvers before they were executed. It was like fighting an enemy that could read minds. Warlord Thrax fought with all his skill and fury. His personal guard ship destroyed dozens of enemy vessels, but he was bleeding too. His ship was damaged. His crew was dying. And somewhere in the chaos, he realized the truth. The Vrather had been the galaxy's predators for 12,000 years. Because no one had ever been able to match them. They were stronger, faster, more brutal. They had the best weapons, the best tactics, the best hunters, but the humans were not trying to match them. The humans were trying something different. They were not fighting the Vrather directly. They were fighting around them, using the Vrather's own aggression against them, drawing them into traps, cutting supply lines, targeting weak points, and worst of all, they were inspiring others to fight. For 12,000 years, conquered species had accepted their fate. They had submitted because resistance was futile, but now they saw that resistance was possible. They saw that the Vra could bleed, could fail, could be beaten. That hope was more dangerous than any weapon. After 6 days of continuous combat, the supreme predator made a decision that shattered the myth of Rack or invincibility. He ordered a retreat. Over 700 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of hunters were dead. The fleet that was supposed to exterminate humanity limped away, broken and humiliated. But the humans did something that confused Thrax. They let the survivors go, the fleeing Vra. Their ships were damaged, slow, vulnerable. The human fleet could have pursued, could have destroyed them one by one, could have ensured that none escaped, but they did not. they simply stopped, formed a defensive line, and watched the Verather retreat. Thrax could not understand it. Any Verather commander would have pursued, would have hunted the survivors down, would have left no witnesses to speak of the defeat. Mercy was weakness. Everyone knew the news of the Grand Hunt's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. It traveled through trade routes and smuggler networks. It was whispered in slave barracks and shouted in hidden resistance meetings. For the first time in 12,000 years, the prey had beaten the predators. The Verather tried to control the story. They claimed the retreat was strategic. They claimed the losses were exaggerated. They threatened death to anyone who spread rumors of weakness. But the truth could not be contained. On 1,000 world enslaved species began to hope. They looked at each other with new eyes. They began to ask questions that had been forbidden for millennia. What if we fought back? What if we refused to submit? What if the Verather were not as invincible as they claimed? The conquered of broken chains had been a secret alliance for centuries, formed by the most desperate of the conquered species. It had survived through careful secrecy and absolute caution. Its members dreamed of freedom but never truly believed it was possible. Now for the first time they believed. The conquered sent envoys to Earth, 3 small ships carrying representatives from 12 different species. They traveled in disguise, hiding among commercial traffic, avoiding their patrols. The journey took months. Many of them expected to die along the way. When they finally reached Earth, they were met not with weapons but with welcome. The human Admiral Chen received them personally. She was older than they expected, her hair gray and her face lined with years of stress and responsibility, but her eyes were sharp and her handshake was firm. We have been waiting for you, she said, or someone like you. We knew we could not beat the Dominion alone. Conquered representatives were confused. They had come to offer help to humanity. They had expected to find warriors focused on their own survival. Instead, they found something else. You knew we would come, asked the Mellery delegate, a small creature with silver fur and large sad eyes. The Mellery had been among the first species the Verather conquered. They had been prey for 11,000 years. We hoped, Chen said, when we first encountered the Verather, we studied everything we could about them. We learned about their empire, their conquests, the species they had enslaved or destroyed. We knew that if we wanted to survive, we needed allies, and we knew that those allies were suffering. Under their rule, she led them through the corridors of the human command center. Everywhere they looked, they saw evidence of preparation, maps of the territory, intelligence reports on fleet movements, weapons designs based on captured technology. We have been planning this war for years, Chen continued. We knew it would come. Eventually, we knew we could not hide. So we prepared, and part of that preparation was reaching out to others who might share our cause. The Crexian delegate, a tall being with crystalline skin, spoke carefully. You want us to fight with you. We want to give you the chance to fight for yourselves, Chen said. We do not want to replace the Raptor as your rulers. We want to help you become free. What you do with that freedom is your choice. Representatives looked at each other. This was not what they had expected. The galaxy they knew operated on simple principles. The strong dominated the weak. There was no such thing as Equality, there was no such thing as true alliance, yet here were these humans offering exactly that. Why? The Mealery delegate asked. Why would you help us? What do you gain? Chen stopped walking. She turned to face them, her expression serious. We gain allies, she said. We gain friends. We gain a galaxy that is not ruled by monsters. She paused. But more than that, we gain the knowledge that we have done something right, something good that matters to us, perhaps more than you know. Sithrani delegate, an ancient being whose species had been nearly extinct for millennia, spoke for the first time. Her clear throat voice was weak, but her words were clear. We have waited 10,000 years for someone to say those words. We had begun to believe no one ever would. The alliance was formed that day. The conquered provided what humanity needed most: intelligence. They knew the dominion from the inside. They knew where the fleets were stationed. They knew which systems were poorly defended. They knew the supply lines, the communication networks, the weaknesses that the Vractor had never bothered to hide because they had never imagined they would need to. In exchange, humanity provided something the conquered had lost long ago: hope. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the supreme predator faced the greatest crisis of his long reign. The defeat at Earth had shaken the foundations of the Dominion. Species that had been obedient for centuries were suddenly restless. Production quotas were missed. Slave uprisings erupted on a dozen worlds. Minor hunting fleets were ambushed and destroyed by enemies that had seemed pacified, and worse, the Veraptor themselves were beginning to question. Warlord Thrax had not spoken publicly about the battle, but rumors spread through the fleet. Stories of human ships that could not be stopped, stories of weapons that cut through Vrath armor like it was nothing, stories of creatures that fought without fear, without hesitation, without any hope of survival, and somehow won. The supreme predator called a council of war. Every surviving warlord attended. Every fleet commander, every senior hunter. They gathered in the great hall of the Devourer of Worlds, surrounded by the trophies of 10,000 conquered species. We face a choice, the supreme predator said. His voice echoed through the hall. We can retreat. We can abandon this war against humanity. We can consolidate our forces and wait for the unrest to pass. He paused, his eyes swept across the assembled hunters. Or we can attack, not Earth this time. The humans have made their planet a fortress, but they cannot defend everything while they build their alliances, while they plot their rebellions. We will strike at the heart of their hope. He brought up a holographic display. It showed the Dominion's borders, showed the locations of known rebel activity, showed the estimated positions of the human fleet. The humans cannot be everywhere at once. Their allies are weak, scattered, poorly equipped. If we crush the rebellion before it can grow, we crush the hope that feeds it, and without hope, prey will submit again, as they always have. Thrax watched from his position near the front. He said nothing, but he was troubled. He had fought the humans. He had seen what they could do, and he had seen something else in them. Something the supreme predator did not seem to understand. The humans did not fight because they hoped to win. They fought because they refused to submit. Victory was not their goal. Survival was not their goal. Their goal was something simpler and more dangerous. They would rather die free than live as slaves. Thrax had never encountered a species like that. The Verather valued survival Above all else, they submitted to stronger wrath when necessary. They cooperated because it helped them survive. The idea of choosing death over submission was incomprehensible, and that made the humans unpredictable, dangerous, terrifying. But Thrax said nothing. He was not sure his words would be welcome, and he was not sure what he would say even if they were. The supreme predator gave the order. The remaining their fleets would launch a massive offensive against the rebellion. They would target the weakest allied species. First, they would crush them one by one. They would remind the galaxy what happened to those who defied the Dominion, and then when the rebellion was destroyed, they would return to Earth with every ship they had left. The Dominion would not retreat. The Dominion would not negotiate. The Dominion would do what it had always done. It would hunt, it would kill, it would consume. Or so the Supreme Predator believed. He did not know that human intelligence had intercepted every word of his counsel. He did not know that even as he spoke, the Conquered was warning its member species. He did not know that the trap he planned to spring was already being turned against him, and he did not know about the human fleet that was at that very moment traveling toward the one target the Vrather had never thought to defend. Thrauz Prime, the Vera, their home world, the heart of the Dominion. Admiral Chen had argued against the plan. At first it was risky. It required a small fleet to travel deep into enemy territory. It required speed, precision, and luck. If anything went wrong, the entire human strike force would be destroyed. But her commander Urs had convinced her. The Vrather thought like predators. They projected strength. They attacked weakness. They never imagined that their prey might strike at their home. Their defenses would be minimal. Their attention would be elsewhere. And if the strike succeeded, it would change everything. We do not need to destroy their world, the lead commander had said. We just need to show them that we can. We need to show them that they are not untouchable. We need to show them fear. Chen had agreed. The fleet launched in secret. 100 human ships, the best crews, the newest weapons. They traveled through carefully mapped routes, avoiding their patrol, slipping through gaps in the sensor networks. They moved like ghosts. They moved like hunters, and they carried with them the fate of the galaxy. Thrauz Prime had never been attacked in 12,000 years of Dominion history. No enemy had ever reached the home world. No enemy had ever dared. The very idea was unthinkable. The planet was a monument to rack their supremacy. Its cities were built from the bones and treasures of conquered species. Its skies were filled with the banners of 1,000 victories. Its orbital shipyards produced the mightiest warships in the galaxy. Every child grew up looking at those shipyards, knowing that they were safe, knowing that the Dominion was eternal. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, no one on Thrauz Prime believed what they were seeing. Defense stations fired their weapons almost by reflex, but there were not many of them. Why would there be? The Dominion had spent its resources on offensive fleets, on hunting packs, on weapons of conquest. Defense had never been a priority. The humans exploited this perfectly. Their ships moved with the same terrifying coordination that had devastated the Grand Hunt. Small, fast, precise. They slipped through the gaps in the defensive fire. They targeted specific structures with surgical accuracy. Power stations, communication hubs, orbital shipyards. They did not bomb cities. They did not attack civilian populations. They did not kill indiscriminately. This confused the Vrather even more than the attack itself. On the surface, panic spread. Millions of Vrather looked up at the sky and saw something they had never imagined. Foreign ships, enemy ships. Above their home, the supreme predator received the news aboard the devourer of worlds 10,000 light years away. He was in the middle of planning his offensive against the rebellion. His fleet was spread across a dozen systems, preparing to strike, and now his home world was under attack. For a long moment he did not react. He simply stared at the communication screen, watching the reports coming, watching his world burn. Then the rage came. Turn the fleet around, he roared. All ships maximum speed, we go home. His officers scrambled to obey, but even as they worked, they knew the truth. Thrauz Prime was weeks away at maximum hyperspace speed. By the time they arrived, the attack would be long over. Whatever the humans intended to do, they would have plenty of time to do it. The attack lasted 6 hours. In that time, the humans dismantled the infrastructure that made the Dominion function. They destroyed the shipyards that built the hunting fleets. They severed the communication links that connected Thrauz Prime to the rest of the Empire. They knocked out the power grid that supported the planetary defense systems. When they were done, the mightiest world in the galaxy was crippled, isolated, helpless. And then the human admiral broadcast a message not just to Thrauz Prime, to the entire galaxy, every frequency, every network, every species that could receive it. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Command. We are speaking to you from orbit above the Varar home world. She paused to let that sink in. For 12,000 years, the Varar Dominion has terrorized this galaxy. They have conquered. They have enslaved. They have destroyed entire species because they could. They called this the natural order. They claimed that the strong had the right to prey upon the weak. Her voice hardened. Today we have proven them wrong. The message continued. It was translated into hundreds of languages, broadcast to thousands of worlds. The Vrather believed their home world was untouchable. They believed their power was absolute. They believed no one could challenge them. Now they know the truth. They are not invincible. They are not gods. They are just another species. And like every bully in history, they fall when someone stands up to them. Chen looked into the camera. Her eyes were tired but fierce. To the Var we say this: your fleet is far from home. Your home world is at our mercy. Your empire is already crumbling. As the species you enslaved rise against you, you have two choices. Continue this war and we will destroy everything you have built, or surrender, release your slaves, submit to judgment for your crimes, accept the consequences of what you have done. She paused again. We do not want to destroy you. We did not seek this war. You came to our world. You threatened our people. You gave us no choice but to fight, and now we are giving you a choice. Take it. The broadcast ended on the devourer of worlds. The supreme predator watched in silence round him. His officers waited for orders, for rage, for some reaction that would tell them what to do, but the supreme predator said nothing. He stared at the image of his burning home world. He stared at the human ships hovering above cities that had stood for millennia. He stared at the end of everything he had believed. For the First time in his 300 years of life, the Supreme Predator did not know what to do. It was Thrax who finally spoke. Supreme Predator, may I speak? The ancient ruler turned slowly. His eyes were empty, lost. Speak. Thrax stepped forward. He had thought about this moment for a long time, ever since the first battle at Earth, ever since he had seen what humans were capable of. I have fought them, he said. I have seen them up close. I have studied them, and I need to tell you something that I do not think you want to hear. The Supreme Predator waited. They are not prey. Thrax said, they are not even predators. Not the way we understand the word. They are something else, something we do not have a name for. He took a breath. They kill when they must, but they do not enjoy it. They could have destroyed our home world. They could have slaughtered millions of our people. They chose not to, not because they are weak, but because they are strong enough to choose. Thrax met the Supreme Predator's eyes. That kind of strength we cannot defeat. We can fight them forever. We can throw every ship we have at them, and they will keep fighting back, not for victory, not for conquest, but because they believe submission is worse than death. You cannot break a species like that. You can only kill them all. And I do not think we can do that. He paused. Their offer is genuine. I believe that they could destroy us, but they would rather not. I do not understand why, but I believe it is true. For a long moment no one spoke. Then the Supreme Predator did something Navrather had ever seen before. He bowed his head. Send a message to the humans, he said quietly. Tell them we accept their terms. The war was over. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Vera Dominion was dissolved. The conquered species were freed. The survivors of 12,000 years of oppression finally had the chance to rebuild their worlds, their cultures, their futures. It was not easy. Many species wanted revenge. Many wanted to see the Verther suffer as they had suffered. The anger and pain of millennia did not disappear overnight. But the humans insisted on justice, not vengeance. Trials were held. War criminals were punished. The Vra people as a whole were given the chance to become something better than what they had. Then some refused. Some clung to the old ways. Some tried to rebuild the Dominion in secret. They failed, but many further accepted the new reality. The young ones especially, who had never known the glory days of conquest, who had only seen their empire crumble and their beliefs shattered. They had to find a new way to live. Warlord Thrax became one of the first Vrather to join the new Galactic Council. He sat beside Maori and Kazayans and humans. He helped write the laws that would govern the new order. He made amends for the species he had helped conquer. It was strange work for a predator, but Thrax had learned something in his war against humanity. Strength was not about domination. Strength was about choice. The humans had proven that they had the power to destroy, and they chose to build. Instead, they had the power to rule, and they chose to share instead. That was real strength. That was real power, and perhaps someday the Verther could learn it too. Admiral Chen retired after the war. She spent her remaining years on Earth, watching the galaxy she had helped save, watching the new alliances form, watching species that had been enemies for millennia learn to live together. She was asked once by a young journalist what she thought humanity's greatest achievement was. She thought about it for a long time before answering. We showed the galaxy that Power does not have to mean domination. She said that strength does not have to mean cruelty. That you can be the most dangerous species in the universe and still choose to be kind. She smiled. The further were right about one thing: the strong do shape the galaxy. But they were wrong about what that means. True strength is not taking what you want. True strength is being able to take what you want and choosing not to. Choosing to help instead, choosing to protect instead, choosing to build. Instead, she looked up at the sky, at the stars that now belong to everyone. That is what we taught the galaxy, and that is why we won. The reporter asked if she had any regrets. Chen shook her head. We did not want that war. We would have been happy to live in peace, but when the predators came, we did not run. We did not submit. We stood up and fought back. And when we won, we did not become the new predators. We became something better. She turned to face the reporter directly. The galaxy once had apex predators, creatures that ruled through fear and violence. That age is over now. The new age belongs to everyone, the strong and the weak, the predators and the prey, all of us. Together, she looked back at the stars one final time.